The United Kingdom and your other allies have called for the immediate resumption of UN aid flights to Yemen and the opening of the port. What is your reply?
The airports in Yemen and the seaports in Yemen are being opened with the exception of Hodeidah. We have said that we will suspend all operations of these ports after the ballistic missile hit Riyadh International Airport. We have said that these measures are temporary in order to make sure that we have mechanisms to prevent the smuggling of weapons and missiles that can be launched at Saudi Arabia from Yemen. And within a matter of days, we reopened the ports, and now we are adopting certain procedures to minimize the possibility that Iran can smuggle missiles or missile technology to its allies, the Houthis.
The UN has said every day is a day too long. They need the main Red Sea port, Hodeidah, opened immediately.
We have a number of seaports open along the Red Sea.
But they're not as big as Hodeidah.
We have increased, we're working on increasing the capacity at those ports. We have other plans for making other ports available to Yemen. I think the issue of Hodeidah, the Houthis destroyed the cranes that were at the port of Hodeidah. The Houthis charge money ransom for every ship that docks in Hodeidah. The Houthis then proceed to steal the humanitarian assistance that is offloaded in the port of Hodeidah, and they proceed to sell it in order to fund their war machine. They don't distribute it to the people who need it. So for some reason there has been
accusations too that your bombardment as well has caused damage at Hodeidah.
That's not correct. We did not bomb the port of Hodeidah. The Houthis destroyed the cranes from the ground, and everybody knows this. There has been this myth built around Hodeidah, and it's taken on this proportion that is out of reality. There's no sense of reality to it.
What about the reality that the United Nations says that 7 million Yemenis are at risk of famine if the main ports and the airport in Sana'a in northern Yemen under Houthi control is opened? Does that worry you?
The airport of Sana'a, what worries me is this misinformation and outright disinformation that is being pushed and that is being repeated and that is being sold as truth. The airport of Sana'a was never closed to humanitarian flights. The flights go in. The reason
They're
we
not
have
going in now.
The reason we
They're
have
not going in
the
now.
reason we have starvation in Yemen is because the Houthis lay siege on cities and towns and prevent assistance from coming in. The starvation does not occur in the territories controlled by the government. The Houthis are the ones who randomly shell villages and towns. The Houthis are the ones who deploy child soldiers. The Houthis are the ones who have laid tens of thousands of landmines that are a danger to everyone.
All sides in this war have been called upon to do their part to ease the suffering and to stop the fighting. This week, the international outcry is against the Saudi-led blockade of the ports, seaports and airports.
Yeah, but
so the call is on Saudi Arabia to do something now.
We are by far the largest provider of humanitarian assistance to Yemen. No country or combination of countries in the world has provided more aid to Yemen than Saudi Arabia has.
So when will the flights open into Sana'a airport?
When the Houthis handed over to the United Nations, as they said they would many, many months ago, it will be. When the Houthis hand over the port of Hodeidah to the United Nations, as they said they would for almost a year now, the port will be opened. But the airport in Aden is open. There are other airports in Yemen that are open. There are a number of ports along the Red Sea and along the Arabian Sea that are open, and they're being used, and we're increasing capacity at those ports. We have land bridge where we bring in humanitarian assistance from Saudi Arabia into Yemen. Unfortunately, a large percentage of humanitarian assistance provided by Saudi Arabia and other countries is subject to looting by the Houthis.
So just to be clear, the United Nations has specifically said to Saudi Arabia, please open the Hodeidah port because people will die of starvation if you don't.
I believe
that doesn't trouble you, the consequences of not opening the port and trying to tighten the inspection regimes. The United Nations have recognized your concerns about the port, but what they're saying is work with them to open it more quickly.
The United Nations has been working or trying to work with the Houthis for almost a year for the Houthis to hand over the port to the UN and have not succeeded. I think the blame should be directed at the Houthis, not at the coalition. What would you do if a ballistic missile, hit London Heathrow Airport? What would you do? Wouldn't you take precautions to protect your people? We have had more than 70 ballistic missiles launched at our country. We have tens of thousands of students in the south who cannot attend schools because of the random shelling by the Houthis. We have many Saudis who have died, civilians, because of the shelling by the Houthis. Is this something that any country will tolerate? Of course not.
Both sides, there is more than one side in this war.
With all due respect, you cannot equate the actions of the coalition, which is legitimate action, to protect a legitimate government from takeover by a radical militia allied with Hezbollah and Iran. The Houthis are the ones who took over Yemen by staging a coup. They are the ones who robbed Yemen of a political process that would have brought stability and peace to Yemen.
But with all due respect, the United Nations has said that all sides are guilty here of causing the deaths of civilians, but the overwhelming majority are because of the bombardment by the Saudi-led coalition. My BBC colleagues were in Yemen this week. They saw the results of the Saudi-led coalition bombardment. Are more steps going to be taken to protect civilians in this war?
We have taken steps and will continue to take steps from the beginning of the conflict to minimize civilian damages to civilian, and to make sure that we have the accurate we hit legitimate military targets. There are more than 40,000 no-strike items on our lists. We vet this process very thoroughly. Where there are complaints, we investigate and we make amends. This is something the Houthis don't do. And with all due respect to the statistics that people have been putting out, we take issue with it. And we have consistently and repeatedly said that we take issue with the way the statistics were gathered and with the way the statistics were complied.
When the Houthis fired a long-range missile, which was intercepted over the international airport here in Riyadh, you called it an act of war because you say that the missile had Iranian markings on it.
The missile is an Iranian missile.
It's an
Iranian missile. This is not the first missile to land in Saudi Arabia that is Iranian manufactured. More than 70 of them have been. So the missile could not have been operated by the Houthis. We believe the missile was launched from Houthi-controlled territory by Iranian operatives and Hezbollah operatives. What do you call it when a country lobs more than 70 missiles at you?
So isn't this
tantamount to war?
This blockade of Yemen is part of an escalating war with Iran, in actuality, a proxy war?
There is no blockade of Yemen. We said we have lifted the blockade after we put in place
but
measures.
It's not open yet, sir.
Sana'a airport is not open to commercial traffic. Hodeidah airport is not open. But Aden is open, Medi is open,
the Houthi areas are not open.
The what?
The areas controlled by the Houthis.
Do you want us to give assistance directly to the Houthis so they can shoot at us?
But would you do this? People who live in those areas.
We send them supplies. We provide assistance to all Yemenis, irrespective of who they are. The Houthis are the ones who rob the assistance and sell it for gain rather than give it to the people to save their lives. That's why where the major responsibility lies, not with the legitimate government of Yemen, nor with the coalition.
You were supposed to be in London this week for a meeting with the main players in Yemen to try to find a political solution. Can you return to that moment?
Yes, but you cannot have meetings when the Houthis, with their Iranian backers, launch ballistic missiles at your capital. It can't be business as usual, and it won't be business as usual. We need to find ways to protect our country and to protect our people, while at the same time we pursue a political process. Keep in mind that since this conflict began, more than 70 understandings were reached. Every single one of them the Houthis reneged on.
You say it's not business as usual. Is this the moment where Saudi Arabia, which has long expressed concern about what you see as growing Iranian influence and meddling in the region, this is the beginning of an escalation of the pressure on Iran in Yemen, in Lebanon, across the region?
I wouldn't call it escalation. We're defending ourselves.
But you're escalating the pressure on Iran.
We're not the ones who started this. The Iranians did the moment the Khomeini revolution took place. They did the moment they enshrined in their constitution the principle of exporting the revolution. They did the moment they designated Saudi Arabia as a country whose system they want to overthrow. They did the moment they attacked our embassies and the embassies of more than 12 other countries. They did it the moment they assassinated our diplomats on more than one occasion. The moment they planted terror cells in our country. They committed terrorist attacks in our country. They harbored terrorists and fugitives, including those who perpetrated the 1996 Khobar Towers bombing. And they harbored the board of directors of al-Qaeda. We know from Osama bin Laden's documents that he and the Iranians had a very cozy relationship.
So this is the history. And are you
Yes.
saying that now is the moment where you're going to try to put greater pressure on Iran? Saudi officials here use the phrase pushing Iran back to its borders. Is this the beginning of a new push?
We've come to the conclusion that we cannot reason with Iran. We've come to the conclusion that every time we extend our hand in friendship, all we get is death and destruction. So we came to the conclusion that enough is enough, and we will protect our interests. And that's what you're seeing. The escalation did not come from us, it came from the Iranians.
There is concern, as you know, about either a declaration of war or an accidental tumbling into war. How great is that fear?
We want to avoid this at all costs. Nobody needs war. But we can't have the Iranians walk all over the region. This has got to stop, and this is not our policy. This is the Trump administration's policy. Prime Minister May spoke about this a couple of days ago. You heard the French minister, foreign minister at the press conference today. The world is saying to Iran, enough is enough. Act like a rational country.
President Trump has said in a tweet that Saudi Arabia knows what it's doing. But Secretary of State Tillerson issued a statement warning Saudi Arabia and Iran not to use Lebanon as a playing field. Who do you listen to?
Lebanon is not a playing field. Lebanon is a country...
It's not the next front in your war with Iran, or your Cold War with Iran?
Lebanon is a country that has suffered and continues to suffer because of Iran's proxy, Hezbollah. Hezbollah is hijacking the Lebanese political system. Hezbollah is using the financial system to launder money. Hezbollah is using the ports to smuggle drugs and weapons. Hezbollah, which is an instrument of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, is an instrument that Iran has used to cause mischief in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Yemen. Hezbollah is the world's foremost terrorist organization, and Hezbollah now dominates Lebanese politics. What we're trying to do is bring balance back to Lebanon. What we're trying to do is support the Lebanese government be strong, and we're trying to make sure that Hezbollah's influence or grip on Lebanon is removed.
Is that why you called Saad al-Hariri to Riyadh? Because you were worried he was trying to work with Hezbollah rather than to work against it in the unity government?
I think the decision to, and Prime Minister Hariri can speak for himself on this issue, but I believe the decision that he made to resign was based on the fact that at every turning point, Hezbollah would throw obstacles in his way. And every time he tries to move the country forward, Hezbollah creates more obstacles. And he reached a point where he said, I'm not going to do this. Again, enough is enough.